A routine traffic stop on a quiet night in Willow Creek turns into something far more disturbing when Officer James Carter approaches the vehicle. Behind the wheel sits a terrified 12-year-old girl, and in the back seat a crying infant. What starts as a suspected DUI spirals into a desperate chase, a mysterious disappearance, and a race against time to unravel a chilling conspiracy. The night shift had been quiet, too quiet. Officer James Carter adjusted his grip on the steering wheel of his patrol car, his eyes scanning the darkened streets of Willow Creek. A light drizzle slicked the pavement, amplifying the glow of the streetlights stretching into the distance. The town had its fair share of disturbances, bar fights, domestic disputes, the occasional drug bust, but at this hour, the streets were usually still. The radio crackled to life, slicing through the quiet. All units be advised, report of a possible DUI, black sedan westbound on Holloway Road, vehicle swerving in and out of lanes, tag unconfirmed. Carter reached for the radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 22. I'm near Holloway. I'll check it out. He flicked on his lights and eased onto the main road, eyes trained ahead. Willow Creek wasn't big, but the winding roads outside the main square were treacherous at night. It didn't take long before he spotted it. A black sedan moving erratically, the taillights weaving between the lines. It veered sharply to the right, nearly clipping the guardrail before jerking back into the lane. "Damn," Carter muttered. "This guy's going to kill someone." He activated his siren. The sedan hesitated, slowing just a bit before picking up speed. "Come on, don't make me chase you," he muttered, reaching for the radio. "Dispatch, suspect is failing to yield. I'm initiating a stop." A moment later, the sedan's brake lights flickered. Then it rolled to a slow stop near the shoulder. Carter exhaled. He left the engine idling, his hand instinctively resting on the grip of his sidearm. The last time a traffic stop had felt this off, he'd ended up wrestling a meth head who nearly took his head off with a tire iron. Carter stepped out, approaching the driver's side cautiously. The window was down just enough for him to glimpse a figure inside. Small, too small. His gut clenched. "Hands where I can see them." The hands that appeared weren't the rough, unsteady hands of a drunk. They were small, barely bigger than a child's. Carter hesitated, his brain catching up with what his eyes were telling him. His flashlight beam cut through the dim interior, landing on a wide-eyed, terrified girl, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her fingers looked bloodless. What the hell? The kid, 12, maybe 13, stared straight ahead, breathing fast, chest rising and falling erratically. Her blonde hair was disheveled, sweat dotting her forehead despite the cool night air. Carter's training kicked in. Drunk parents? Stolen car? A runaway? A dozen possibilities swirled in his head, none of them good. He switched to a calmer tone. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" The girl swallowed hard, her eyes darting to the rearview mirror. A small, muffled whimper came from the back seat. Carter moved his light and his stomach dropped. A baby. A tiny infant strapped in a car seat that was barely secure, kicking her feet and fussing, but otherwise unharmed. His pulse quickened. This had just gone from strange to something else entirely. Carter softened his tone further. "Are you okay? Is the baby yours?" The girl shook her head quickly, then croaked, "Please, please don't take us back." Something about the way she said it made the hair on the back of Carter's neck rise. "Back where?" Before the girl could answer, her whole body tensed, her grip tightening on the wheel. Panic flooded her features. Carter saw it too late. The girl's foot slammed the gas pedal to the floor. "Hey, stop!" The car lurched forward, tires screeching against the asphalt. Carter barely had time to jump as the sedan sped off, fishtailing wildly before gaining traction. Damn it! Carter sprinted back to his cruiser, yanking the door open and throwing it into gear. The engine roared as he gave chase, sirens screaming to life. "Dispatch, suspect fled the stop. Juvenile driver with an infant in the back. Heading north on Holloway, speeds approaching 60. The radio crackled back, but Carter barely registered it. His eyes were locked on the sedan ahead as it swerved between lanes, barely missing a parked truck. The baby's cries echoed faintly from the car's open windows. His heart pounded. This wasn't a joyride. This was a full-blown panic escape. The sedan blew past a red light. If another car had been crossing, this would have ended in a fatal wreck. Carter clenched his jaw. Time to end this before someone got killed. He flicked on his overhead speaker. "Sweetheart, you need to stop the car." Pull over now. No response. The sedan barreled forward, taking a hard left onto a side road leading toward the old construction site near Willow Bridge. Carter cursed. That road was a dead end. The sedan's wheels skidded as the girl tried to correct the turn, but the pavement was still wet from the earlier drizzle. The tires lost traction. Carter watched, helpless, as the car spun out, veering off the road completely. The front end slammed into a ditch, the frame crunching on impact before going still. Silence. Carter barely remembered throwing his car into park before rushing toward the wreck. The driver's door was ajar. Smoke curled from the crumpled hood. His breath was heavy as he reached inside, pulse hammering in his ears. The girl was slumped against the seatbelt, eyes fluttering. "Hey, stay with me." Carter checked for injuries. A gash on her forehead, but nothing that seemed life-threatening. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, I need EMS at..." A weak mumble cut him off. Carter leaned in. "What did you say?" The girl's eyes barely opened, her voice so faint he almost didn't hear it. "He's coming for us." A cold weight settled in Carter's gut. "Who?" The girl didn't answer. Her head lolled slightly, then she went completely limp. Carter's throat tightened. He turned his attention to the baby in the back seat, still crying but unharmed. His hands trembled as he reached out, brushing his fingers against the infant's tiny fist. A slow breath escaped his lips, but it did nothing to settle the unease crawling up his spine. He had no idea who he was, but something told him this was only the beginning. Then, from somewhere beyond the tree line, a noise shattered the night. Not the sound of sirens or distant cars, not the wind rattling through the abandoned construction site. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Coming closer. Carter turned sharply, his grip tightening on the holster at his hip. His breath caught as a figure emerged from the darkness, just beyond the reach of his headlights. The shape was tall, broad-shouldered, his face obscured in shadow. But it wasn't just the presence that sent a chill through Carter's veins. It was the way the man stood, unmoving, watching, a predator surveying its prey. The baby let out a shrill wail, and Carter's instincts screamed at him to move. Every muscle in his body tensed, but he forced himself to stay rooted, his training kicking in despite the dread pressing down on his chest. The figure took another step, his slow, measured pace completely at odds with the urgency clawing at Carter's gut. He had seen criminals, gangsters, desperate fugitives willing to die before surrendering. But this was different. Something about this man was wrong. Carter squared his stance, drawing his weapon. "Stop right there. Hands where I can see them." The figure remained silent. The air around them felt heavier, thick with something Carter couldn't name. The world itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, finally, a deep, gravelly voice cut through the tension. "She belongs to me." Carter barely had time to process the words before the streetlights above flickered, then burst in a shower of sparks, plunging the entire scene into darkness. The baby's cries rose to a frantic pitch, a high-pitched, desperate wail that sent a bolt of fear through Carter's chest. His own breath came quick and shallow as he reached for the car door, his fingers fumbling in the darkness. And then, the screaming began. Not just the baby, not just him, but a chorus of voices, distant, close, all around him. Agonized wails that seemed to rise from the very ground beneath his feet, twisting through the air like smoke. Carter's heart slammed against his ribs. He turned sharply, weapon raised, but the figure was gone. No, not gone. Closer, a whisper of movement to his left, the crunch of gravel behind him. A hand ice-cold and impossibly strong clamped around his wrist. Carter's gun was yanked from his grip, flung into the darkness. Then came the breath, hot against his ear. "You shouldn't have interfered." A force struck him hard in the chest, sending him sprawling onto the pavement. Pain exploded through his back as the air was ripped from his lungs. The baby screamed louder, a piercing sound that echoed in his skull. Carter forced himself up, his vision swimming. He had to get to her. Had to. The car door was open, and the car seat was empty. Carter's blood turned to ice. A single, lingering whisper slithered through the night. "She's mine now." Then silence. The wind died. The shadows stilled. The night held its breath. Carter staggered forward, chest heaving, but deep down he already knew. The baby was gone.